When Melinda showed up, she came to the fire station. I thought, uh-oh. So went out there, and she told me that we were pregnant. The thought of having another kid was just awesome.
My OB-GYN called and said that our screening had come back, and there was a 1 in 7 chance that the baby would have trisomy 13 or trisomy 18. There were evident tumors on her brain, tumors on her kidneys. I think I hung up and was really in shock.
There is no cure. There is no making her better. Oh, it broke my heart. It was terrible. We had been told so many, she won't do this, she won't do that, she won't do this. And one of them was, there's a high probability she'll be stillborn. They had us a private room, a private surgical suite, because it was a different experience for them too. Abby showed up and she
Let
took
out a big cry.
She did. She cried and took a big breath, and she was a little purple there at the beginning, and Ashlyn and I, we cheered her on and coaxed her on, and the nurses all helped out, and she took off just like there was no other, and she did really, really good. We both recall the nurse saying, "This little baby's not done. We've got to do some things to take care of her." They put a feeding tube in through her nose to just provide her with nourishment. Probably the 9th day is when she really, really, really got bad. She would have periods of apnea, or her breathing would stop. The first time I saw it, we were all here together, and family was here, and we thought, well, that's it, you know. And we just cried, and of course our daughter was gone. And a few minutes later, she gasped and cried, and I just looked at her stunned, and she'd start breathing again, and she'd turn pink, and she'd go on. Over the next few days, she did that. One time it was 22 minutes that I could not detect a pulse and could not see any breathing in her. She would do things that was just unfathomable to me, unbelievable to me. I couldn't understand how she was continuing.
The hospice nurse had come in and said, basically, we're at a crossroads. Her intestines were beginning to shut down. She couldn't process the food that she was taking in any longer. We have the option, number one, to stop feeding, and she doesn't eat anymore. Or number two, we continue to feed and basically or potentially rupture her intestines. How in the world do I choose? When the end result is still the same, that she's gonna die, but my choice of how, that's not up to me. And we decided together is we can't wrap our brains around what that means and how to make such a decision. So that night before we went to bed, we prayed that God would just give us some direction.
And we fell asleep.
And the next time we woke up was at 5. Then I noticed that her feeding tube was gone.
I noticed on her cheek that there was no red marks, no glue, no sign that tape and that tube had been there. We couldn't find it. It wasn't near her. It wasn't laying on top of her. It wasn't in the sheets. And then I scooped Abby up in both arms with the blanket that she was in and just picked her up to look. In the center of where Abby was laying, the feeding tube had been pulled out, had been wrapped in a coil like a garden hose, and the tape had taped it together and had been placed underneath where Abby was laying. And a few hours later, she passed away.
She died 4 hours after we found the feeding tube.
Yeah.
She didn't need to eat again.
She never cried because she was hungry. She never had one hunger pain. She laid with Mama and Daddy, and Mama held her, and she took her last breath, and just as peaceful in her mama's arms and daddy's arms. And it had been taken care of. It was an overwhelming feeling inside and out that
We had been
I've
taken
taken
care of.
The hardest decision you thought you were ever going to have to make, and the worst thing that you ever thought you were going to have to do, you didn't have anything to do with it. I took care of it. It's one thing to hear of God's grace and to hear of God's love, but to truly experience it and know that there's nothing on earth can get any worse than this right now in this moment, but to feel that arm around you and that whisper in your ear that's telling you, I love you, I love you, this is for me, I promise you're going to make it. That's where the tears come from. Not so much the loss of Abby, but just the absolute
goodness,
unbelievable goodness and miracle and grace and support and strength that God provided for us. That's like Easter, the resurrection. We've read this story our whole life, but I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's true.
Yes.
I know for a fact that I'm going to see my daughter again. And I know that that God that did that for all of us came to my house in Cyprus, and He took care of me, even though I'm not the perfect guy, but He took me because I was willing, my family was willing, our hearts were open to be used. He took that and He used it for His glory.
As a mother, I see the cross completely different than I did before. I put myself in Mary's place, watching her son. That was her baby. That was her child die on the cross. And the heartbreak that she must have felt watching her son die the way he did. But the resurrection is the hope. Is the hope that we carry forth, knowing that this isn't the end. This isn't the end of the story with Abby. This isn't the end of the story for us. This isn't the end of the story with Christ, that he is risen, that we're going to see Him again, that we get to live with Him eternally, and we get to see Abby every single day through eternity. And I think that's where our hearts just leap for joy in knowing that the resurrection is real and that it happened, and it changed our lives before as believers, but we didn't get it in the sense that we get it today.
This isn't over. We miss her every day. And He's here every day, every moment of every day.